There was a man called Joseph who had 11 brothers, and these brothers hated him so much that they wanted to kill him. In fact, they were willing to sell him for 20 pieces of silver. But why? What did Joseph do to deserve this kind of hatred? Or maybe we should ask, what did his brothers lack? Because it wasn't Joseph who was lacking in any way. He was handsome, he was strong, and his father loved him very much. He even made Joseph a special coat of many colors, which probably didn't help things with his brothers. This guy was a real piece of work. But Joseph wasn't perfect either. In fact, he liked to brag about his dreams. For example, one time he told his brothers, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf rose up and became upright. And your 11 sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." Then he had another dream and said, "Listen to this other dream I had. The sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me." This dude was not subtle at all. And if that wasn't bad enough, Joseph was also righteous. While his brothers were out in the fields, he would stay back at home with his father's family and pray. That's when he heard God tell him, "Behold, I will make you a light for the Gentiles, and your father's house will bow down to you." Once again, this guy couldn't keep it in his pants. He went and told his brothers everything that God told him, and that just pushed his brothers over the edge. They wanted to kill him right then and there, but their father wouldn't allow it. So they decided to wait till their father was asleep and sneak in and throw him into a ditch. The next morning, their father was furious when he realized Joseph was missing. But while he was looking everywhere for his son, Joseph's brothers took the coat that he made for Joseph and dipped it in blood. Then they brought it back to their father, pretending they found it near Joseph's body. Jacob, their father, thought his son was dead. And even though he kept crying for Joseph for a long time, he never gave up on believing that his son was truly gone. And I think that's a lesson in itself. It's a lesson in faith. Sometimes we think we lost it all, that our lives are over, that our prayers weren't answered, but God is good. He keeps his promises, and sometimes what we think is the end is actually the beginning of something better. But let's get back to the story. Meanwhile, Joseph was thrown into a ditch, but some merchants came by and pulled him out. They saw that he was an innocent young man who didn't deserve to die. So instead of leaving him in the ditch, they threw him into prison. Now, as it turns out, Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, was the one who bought Joseph. And Joseph ended up working in Potiphar's palace. But as Joseph worked there, he learned more about faith, patience, love, and endurance. For example, he was falsely accused of doing something he didn't do and was thrown into prison. But even in prison, Joseph interpreted the dreams of those around him and helped them. He also kept praying, and eventually his prayers were answered because after 2 years, the butler remembered Joseph and told Pharaoh about him. So Pharaoh summoned Joseph and asked him to interpret his dream. Basically, Pharaoh had a dream, and no one could tell him what it meant except Joseph. So Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream and explained what it meant. And Pharaoh was so impressed with Joseph that he appointed him as the ruler of his entire kingdom. Now all of this time, Joseph still hadn't heard from his father or any of his brothers. But after a while, God told him, "Your father and your brothers have come to buy grain from Egypt, and they don't know I'm here. You must prepare ahead of time and get ready to meet them. Don't be angry with them or upset with them for selling me, for I have sent you ahead of me to preserve you as a people and to save your life by a great deliverance." So Joseph prepared ahead of time and tested his brothers to see if they had changed. And in a way, I think he was testing them because brothers can be pretty close. If you have a brother, you probably know what I mean. Like, you can fight and argue and get mad at each other, but if someone else says anything bad about your brother, you'll be like, "Hey, that's my brother, you son of a," and you'll defend him even if you don't agree with what he did. But Joseph didn't do that. He kept testing his brothers. And he even pretended that he hated them. When they finally came before him, they had no idea it was Joseph. Couldn't believe it was really him. Joseph said, "What have I done to you? Well, you hated me so much that you sold me. You threw me into a pit, but God turned it all around for good. And now I'm in charge here. Look, don't be afraid. I'm going to take care of you and your families. I swear I will feed you and your children." His brothers started crying and said, "Of course we're sorry, but please forgive us. We were going to tell everyone here in Canaan that you re-alive and that you re-in charge here." And Joseph replied, "Don't leave until your father comes to join me here." As Joseph ruled over Egypt, he provided food for everyone during the famine. But the Bible also tells us that he was careful not to reveal his identity to his brothers. He kept waiting to see if they would tell their father that he was alive, but they didn't. Instead, they returned to Canaan without telling anyone that Joseph was alive. So Joseph's father, Jacob, didn't know that his son was alive. Joseph was still pretending that he hated his brothers. In fact, the first time Jacob heard that his sons were back in Canaan, he thought they came to tell him they killed Joseph. When Joseph was in charge of giving out food, he sent for his father Jacob and the whole family. But even then, he still pretended that he didn't know his brothers. So Jacob and his family moved to Egypt and lived there. Then Joseph revealed himself to his father and said, "Don't be upset with yourself. It wasn't you who sold me. It was my brothers. But God sent me ahead of you to save your life and to keep you alive for many people, for a nation, and for a future kingdom." And Joseph embraced his father and brothers and welcomed them to Egypt. So what can we learn from the story of Joseph? Well, first of all, we can learn about faith. As Joseph was thrown into prison and forgotten, he continued to trust that God would eventually take care of him, and he did. Then we can learn about patience. Joseph waited for over 10 years to reunite with his father. And even when he became ruler of Egypt, he didn't immediately reveal himself to his father. He knew that it wasn't his place to force his presence to be known. It was his father who needed to find him, had to come looking for him. So Joseph waited patiently and trusted that everything would work out in the end. Next, we can learn about love. Even after his brothers sold him and left him to die in a ditch, Joseph forgave them. When he finally revealed himself to them, he didn't hold a grudge. He didn't say, "Hey, you guys threw me into a ditch and left me to die. Now I'm going to make your lives miserable." No, he forgave them. He welcomed them. He treated them like they were his own flesh and blood. He showed them love. And lastly, we can learn about endurance. Joseph endured many hardships throughout his life, from being sold by his brothers to being falsely accused and thrown into prison. He didn't give up on himself or on God. He endured because he knew that God was with him. And because of his endurance, he was able to accomplish great things. He became the ruler of Egypt, and he saved not only his family, but also many other people from death. So Joseph teaches us many important lessons, and we should remember these lessons whenever we face hardships in our own lives. We should never lose hope. We should always keep trying. And we should never forget that God is with us. It's just like he was with Joseph. So thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this short video. Remember to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And until next time, may God bless you and keep you. Amen.